Um, so it's 2024 eclipse season, and I thought I should do a special report because the upcoming lunar eclipse that we've got on the 25th of March is particularly interesting. It's very much keyed into the sacred feminine, and that's something that I feel I want to highlight a lot more on my channels and in my work. Over the last few years, I think I've become very acutely aware of how much we seem to be moving backwards when it comes to things like, feminism, rights for women, abortion rights, people's right to control or have a say over their body and their reproduction. And so that's something that I really wanted to highlight and to focus on in this particular forecast, which is part of a very interesting Saros series that only contains lunar eclipses, actually. But it is quite special, so let's get into why. So I thought we should have a look at the Saros series for this particular lunar A-pulse eclipse, because it's very unusual in many ways. It's a bit of an anomaly, and that's because we haven't had any solar eclipses in this particular Saros series since August 1848, and as a result it hasn't ended up as part of the Brady-Saros classification system, which is what most astrologers use. I think what I find fascinating is that this idea of the lunar eclipse, obviously, it emphasizes the feminine kind of aspect, the sort of the lunar side of the two lights, if you like, the luminaries in astrology. And if we look at the human design that's happening in relation to this particular eclipse, the moon will be in hexagram 18 line 2, and this concerns correcting what is unbalanced in society, and in particular in line 2 the focus is on attitudes towards the sacred feminine, so trying to sort of heal and restore the sacred feminine back into the kind of cultural consciousness in a positive way, and dispelling fears around feminine power, which I think is really at the root of this growth of toxic masculinity that we're seeing in the so-called manosphere over the last couple of years. So quite fascinating from that point of view. Now, this particular, as I said, this series of eclipses all occur at the moon's descending node, so that also might be important. So this is essentially the south node, and with each successive eclipse the moon moves northward, so it's a kind of an upward movement from the South Pole to the North Pole. So that also might be important on some level, that there's this kind of ascension happening of the sacred feminine, if you like. I think what's also fascinating is how long this Saros series has lasted. So the first eclipse in this series took place in April the 29th, 888, so this is sort of in the medieval period, and it will continue until June 2150. So in total the Saros series will last for 1262 years, which is quite something. So quite a long period of time, and I thought it might be interesting to have a look at the first eclipse in the series to see whether it can tell us something about the nature of this series, because that's how Bernadette essentially formed her system, was that she looked at the chart of the first eclipse in the series, and then used that to sort of get a flavor for almost like a birth chart, the flavor for the rest of the family, if you like. So let's have a look at that next. So this is the chart that was for the first lunar eclipse on the 29th of April 888, and it's really fascinating from a number of perspectives. And the first thing about it that we notice is that we've got Scorpio rising here, and the moon is rising with Uranus, so there's already the sense of revolution and of change and of kind of an inverting of the norm, if you like. And we've got the moon, kind of in the mix, and she's in a very powerful sign. This happens to be the sign of her fall in astrology, but nonetheless, it's a very powerful sign, Scorpio. So there's this powerful change-making moon on the kind of on the horizon, rising above the eastern horizon at the time of the eclipse, and I kind of think in a way this foreshadows the fact that the solar eclipses
end, kind of almost halfway through, or two-thirds of the way through the series. And isn't it fascinating then that we've got the sun with Pluto on the western horizon, so setting. And I think this also speaks volumes in the sense that you could say that the sun is dying. The sun is descending into the underworld. It's receding in terms of power, because of course in terms of planetary sect, the sun's domain is the upper half, the upper hemisphere, the diurnal hemisphere of the chart. So it's now descending into the nocturnal hemisphere, which is sort of interesting. And then the moon is rising. The moon is kind of moving in this direction. So it's a little bit, it's already showing this kind of inversion of the norm happening on quite a lot of levels. So I think that's pretty fascinating. And then I haven't put it in the chart, but just below the horizon is Antares, which is the one of the central stars in the constellation of Scorpio. And this star used to be known as the Watcher of the West. It was one of the four kind of ancient stars of Persia, which marked the solstices and the equinoxes at the time, and then became synonymous with the archangels. And then over and above that, there are some other interesting things to note. We've got Jupiter exalted in Cancer, kind of in the ninth house, and we've also got Mars in Aries. So these are both quite strong masculine planets that are sort of prominent in the chart. And with Jupiter is Saturn. So at some point, these two are going to make a conjunction, and we know that generally starts a 20-year cycle. So Jupiter approaching Saturn, but Saturn in Leo, and Saturn here sits at the apex of a T-square to the Sun and the Moon. So quite a tense, fixed T-square aspect. But again, there's a sense that the luminaries are kind of they're sort of balancing opposite ends of a pole, and that there's this challenge to the norm, because of course Saturn very often represents the sort of the establishment, what is traditional, that kind of thing. And we've got it in the sign of Leo, which is the sign of kingship and that kind of thing. So there's almost already this challenge to the sort of traditional sort of cosmic hierarchy that was so entrenched in medieval society, with the king as a representative of God on earth, and then everybody below him, sort of thing. So it's almost already kind of upending that, or challenging it in some way, with Uranus kind of square to Saturn, and then Pluto here also approaching a square to Saturn. So really very powerful energies, quite a challenging, tense kind of aspect with some of the outer planets, all kind of vying for position, if you like. And then the other thing to note is that Black Moon Lilith is in Aries. So Black Moon Lilith is for many astrologers it's the dark side of the moon, in the sense that it's our blind spots. It's our kind of our unconscious blind spots, the position from which we very often project negative emotions onto other people, and that kind of thing. It's aspects of ourselves that we can't accept. And Black Moon Lilith here is in 29 degrees of Aries, so the sort of almost the last degree of Aries. And Aries, of course, is the sign that we now find Chiron in. So that's kind of interesting. So to have Black Moon Lilith in that sign, it's a slight inversion of the norm, if you like. And there's this definite sense with Chiron and Aries of this wounded masculine kind of archetype, that there's these aspects of masculinity that are in need of healing, that feel very alienated from society. And here Black Moon Lilith kind of almost echoing this, but from the feminine perspective. So this is the sort of the feminine blind spot, if you like. So that I think is super interesting. So overall, quite a feisty, explosive chart. You can see here, if you look at the aspects, how many squares and oppositions we've got going on. Quite a lot. Very few trines. In fact, none to do with the luminaries. So I would be very interested in going back and looking at the dates of the lunar eclipses that have happened in this series, to see whether, as I say, they coincide with any important developments in terms of the history of feminism and also female oppression, things like witch burning and that kind of thing.